Okay, so we're on to Siman Tzadik Hey, Halacha Basar B'Chalav. This is the famous Not Bar Not Siman. And it's quite an important Siman, Halacha L'Maisa, various situations that can arise from it. The good news is that because Not Bar Not is a second generation, as we called it, of a flavor, that it may not be as serious of a situation. Nevertheless, we still have to respond to it. We still have to deal with it because, as we will see later on, there are some who hold that this whole idea of not by not is only in a b'di'evet situation, not in a lechatchila. So, there are various ways to look at this whole thing, and it's best that we give an introduction where this is all coming from. And it's coming from the Gemara in the Sugi in Chulin, Daf Kuf Yud Aleph Amid Beis, where there's a machlokes there concerning a particular example that's given there of dogim she'olu beke'ora. Now, looking at the words dogim she'olu beke'ora without Rashi, it's a little hard to understand. Fish that came out of a ke'ora. A ke'ora is, in this particular case, is a pot or I would call it better, a very deep bowl that is used to serve perhaps fish. It happens to be that bowl, the ke'ora, or the bowl, or the pot, or whatever, it was not used to cook the fish. It just happens to be that it was used to put the fish in, or to serve the fish from, or both. In either event, it's a fleishik pot, and fish is parv. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is, can I eat this fish that somehow was hot, somehow, I don't know how yet, somehow was hot, that perhaps picked up some flavor of the fleishik pot? Can I have it with melichix? Can I have it with a kutach, as the Gemara says?
A dairy dish.
A dairy dish. Yeah, well, anyway, why not? Well, the fish has tam of basar. So this is not a question of eating fish with melichix, lox, and cream cheese. This is a problem, a potential problem of eating basar b'chalav through a medium of a part of a dish. We paskin like shvuo, halacha, l'maisa. It's mutar. Why it's noisen tam bar noisen tam, not bar not. This is not real tam basar in the dogim. This is the second generation. The basar, the original basar that was cooked in this pot or in this ke'ora, the original one, the rishon, went into the pot, and now it's coming out of the pot and into the fish. And in the fish, it is being called or identified as a not by not tam of basar. The tam in the fish right now went into the pot, came out in the pot. By the time it's in the fish, it's already a not by not. So what? What does a not by not have to do with anything? Well, a not by not tells us that this tam of basar is lighter. It's kolush, as the term is being used by the poskim. Niklash, that the tam has been weakened. And since we're talking about hetera so far, this tam of basar, which is hetera, which is mutar, at the point that it enters the fish, loses its chashivas, loses its importance. Now, does that mean when I say loses its importance that even if I can taste it, or only if I cannot taste it? Oh, that's a machlokes. That's an interesting machlokes.
Before you go into that machlokes, where we're holding. So I have in this fish a taste of the pot.
Right.
And the fish wasn't cooked in this, but it was somehow hot.
Right. And we'll talk about how it was hot. Yeah.
Now, right now, this is fish. This is not dairy.
Right.
What I'm worried about is the taste that the fish acquired. Acquired once it meets the milk, which it hasn't met yet.
Right.
That once it meets the milk, it might cause a problem.
Yes, that's a question.
Now, my question is, how would it be eating now the milk? Would the fish be cooking with the milk, or would they both be cold? The question being, is it a combination of taste that occurs in my mouth, or is the taste of the milk actually going to be absorbed into the taste of meat in the fish that is absorbed in the fish?
Yes.
Or maybe the taste of the fish is going to be emitted into the milk.
Either or so far.
But there's
So
a big
far,
difference. But there's a big difference.
well, I don't know yet what the difference is.
Well,
I'm going step by step. Right? I don't know yet what the difference is. You have a good point. What exactly is happening in the next step? Elon is asking.
When this becomes a problem.
When it joins the milk.
Right.
Now we're assuming that in order for this to be a problem, the joining should be in a way where it's really joined. We're not talking about that he's eating fish and he's eating milk.
Well, but
right?
if it was meat and milk, it would be a problem.
Even so, but less so.
The Rabbanan.
Yes. Right now we're talking about what is assumed, and it's not only assumed, that's the pshat, is that somehow the two are joined.
Together. They're being eaten together.
And they are actually joined. The tam basar, whatever is there, somehow will be joined together with the chalov.
So
somehow.
that would require heat, no? Wouldn't that require heat for the two?
Well, the fish is hot.
Still hot.
It's still hot, yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, but it's not so much the heat right now that I'm concerned, because,
I know I have a fish that has some degree of remaining meat.
Right. Either way, the tam is good. The tam is always usually a problem in basar b'chalav, and when it comes together with the tam of chalav, it could pose a problem. Yeah.
Slightly wrong.
All right.
What is?
I didn't have a part of a pot, and I had a choice of where to cook it. I chose the.
But you can't.
I'm allowed to.
Flesh.
I'm allowed to cook fish in a fleshika pot.
He means the health problem of the meat.
Question of fish and meat.
No, there's no problem.
There's no problem.
No problem whatsoever. As long as the pot is clean.
It's only if there's real meat.
Only if there's real meat. Yeah. Health.
Then it's a problem.
Then it's a problem. Yeah.
So then one.
You're allowed to cook fish in a meat pot. You're allowed to cook fish in a Melicha pot. No problem whatsoever. As long as the pot is clean, as long as you're not cooking fish and meat together. And by the way, just might as well mention it, a lot of people make the mistake when there is a kiddush of putting on the same plate the chicken and the meat and the fish, and you have to let them know that this is not right.
Shalshut is also something else.
Yeah, sure, anytime.
So that aims.
Yes.
Then what is the issue? Real Worcestershire sauces.
Has a what?
Has a fish sauce.
Right.
The OU labels it OU.
Right.
Real.
That's correct.
It's not supposed to.
Right.
It's not be'ain. Why should it be?
No, but it's a liquid. It still has the
mamashes.
The mamashes.
Not just taste.
It still has the essence.
Where's the mamashes? The fish has now been liquid with other things.
Yeah, but it's not only a tam that may be coming out of the cooking process. It's one of the ingredients. As Elon says, an ingredient in that sauce is fish.
But if the question is, it's not.
Well, that's be'ain. That's be'ain. Be'ain means it's present. Whereas flavor that was acquired from a pot, even though it's there chemically in its composition, it may not be detectable as much.
It's just flavor. It's not the mamashes.
So I would agree with you technically, halachically, technically, if the percentage was so minute that it was bottled anyway b'shishim in the sauce, that it should not even be labeled as such, unless they're labeling it for some other reason.
Besides that, fish and meat is a matter of the two ingredients are unhealthy. It's not a kosher.
Yeah, but still, you still have a din of bittul.
No, but what I'm saying, I'm saying something else.
Right.
Since it's not a matter of taste, but it's a matter of a health issue because of the existence of the chemicals being together, combined.
Sure.
So in that case, it's the question of is it be'ain or not be'ain? All these questions that go into bittul and not bittul, and so is Taaruvot's question that have to do with taste. Because it's not a matter of taste. It's a matter of the actual chemicals being combined.
Yeah, but you still have to determine the amount. And the amount would determine if
but
it's
it has nothing to do with taste. It could be that you can taste it, but
yes,
the amount's
okay.
already not health risk.
Yeah, that's also true. Yes, it wouldn't be a matter of taste. Yes. So I would, it would be interesting to check that out. To see what percentage of fish is
necessary real thing.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's what makes it. Yeah.
And it could be we said by health. Yeah. We have to be more mahmir than by
That's correct too.
So maybe
Chamira sakanto misura. The rabbis tell us that.
The issue of health with other things, the bones and other things.
No, not in this case.
That's something else. That's gefilte fish.
With gefilte fish, the bones or Shabbos boira, possibly. Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
No, but we said in Taaruvot, when we were talking about missing meat, we said that's a health issue.
It's a health issue.
It's a health issue. It's even
more serious. Yeah,
more
that's correct.
Strict.
That's correct.
And so therefore, maybe what for kashrus purposes we called bittul and would maybe in such a health issue could be.
You would have to be concerned about it.
It's an independent law.
Yes, it is. That's correct. It's a separate law. So anyway, so the pre-chodesh is one of the poskim that holds that tam, detecting the tam of nat bar nat in the fish, feeling it is not going to make a difference. It's still called a nat bar nat. Whereas the Yamsha Shlomo would hold, I think he's the only one actually, that says no. If you can detect the tam, that's not a nat bar nat. Nat bar nat is assuming it works. Nat bar nat works. That means it's a diluted tam on condition that you don't feel it. But going on with the Gemara, we have an important Tosfos there. Tosfos is bringing several pshatim, including the son-in-law of Rashi, trying to interpret Rashi. Different interpretation than the way Tosfos sees it. And that's going to make a difference, of course. Because Rashi, in explaining She'olu be'ka'ara, says She'olu minatzli. Tosfos brings it down, and that's the Lashon one. Now, why Olu minatzli? Now, Olu minatzli means, all it means literally, is that somehow it came out of a situation where it was roasted. It was, I guess, baked. It was put into something where the tam of the basar that came into that fish was without liquid. That's all I know from the words she'olu minatzli, that there was no liquid involved. Now, but why would Rashi have to say that? I mean, the fact that it's hot is not enough. It has told me how it became hot. So I saw somebody explain that had it been that the ke'ara itself is hot, but the fish is not, then it would be less of a problem because it would be a klisheni. All right.
What would be
the ke'ara, somehow. Somehow, he was saying the reason why Rashi would be medayik is don't think it's the heat of the pot. I mean, later on, eventually, we will have to see that there's some that differentiate between the two of them being hot versus one of them being hot. But here, it's really not important if it's one of them hot or both of them hot. It's the fact that it came about through heat without roitev, without water, without any liquid. So that's called sli. That's all we need to know right now. Meaning, if I understand this pashut pshat, it means somebody barbecued some fish and put it down when it was hot, straight from the barbecue, into a fleshike pot, and through the heat in the fish, it may have taken out some of the blias of the flesh in the pot. That's pashut pshat of she'olu minatzli. Or it could also be that it was actually sli in the fleshike pot. In other words,
it was roasted in the pot.
Roasted in the pot.
So the pot was hot then.
Exactly. But it was not that the pot was hot through some other means. In other words, the actual fish was in the pot throughout the process of roasting.
Right. So it was roasting in the pot.
Yeah, exactly. So either way, this one actually would be in some ways a little bit stronger.
Right.
Right?
Because the first version, the pot heated up by the fish.
Exactly.
So how much? So actually, the pot is cooling down the fish. So how much taste is it going to?
Exactly.
When it itself is not the source of the heat.
Yeah, because there may be. I saw somebody pointing out a difference, and I still have to look at it again, of somebody that barbecued fish on a spit that's used for meat.
Wow.
That may have a different thing, but I have to look at that a little bit closer again. But here, if you look at the mechaber, dogim shenizbashlu, o shenitzlu b'kedeiro shel basar, either they were cooked, or they were roasted in a kedeiro shel basar, the chutza yafeh, that was completely washed and clean, she'ein shuman davuk bo, that there's no fat or grease, of course, on it. Mutar le'ochlam b'chutav, you can have it with the kuta, with the melichix. Mishum dehaven noisin tam bar noisin tam dehetera. So before we continue with the rest of the seif, that's the mechaber. Mechaber already reveals to us his opinion, how he holds, like the poskim, that it makes no difference how the fish was prepared, even if it was nisbashlu, even if it was cooked, even if it was roasted meaning baked, without water. So right now we're talking about fish, either that were hot from some other source and went into the kedera, or they became hot. Either way, there's no liquid involved. And as you know, tzli usually should be, if anything, less of a problem than bishul. After learning Taaruvot and learning a little bit of Basar v'chalav, we know that by now that bishul is very powerful. You're talking about tremendous pressures in the water, in the boiling water. Tzli, we know, can be very, very hot, but it never, well, I shouldn't say never. Many times it's not like bishul unless you have fatty stuff, where you have the piapua problem. Remember that? Otherwise, you have kedei netila. You don't have oyser kulo. So usually, tzli is less than bishul. Here we're going to find out something very, very interesting soon. I want to go in the right order. That it's going to be a little bit different. Tzli may be, according to some, worse than bishul. We're going to see that soon. But here, for the Mechaber is learning Poshet Pshat, apparently going with Tosis Pshat, the Riz Pshat in Rashi, not his son-in-law's, that therefore, either way, not barnat can be accomplished in more than one way. It could either be accomplished through cooking in a pot, it could be roasting in a pot, or the other example that I gave, she'olu, which is Gemara's example of olu minat tzli.
Olu minat kiara.
Olu minat kiara, but Rashi says minat tzli. In other words, right, Rashi's pshat, in other words, that they may have been hot from some other source, or you can say that they were being roasted in the pot. Either way, I mean, it's not understood that Rashi would hold any differently, supposedly, from between those two versions. But that's one way of learning in Rashi. Now, based on that Gemara, what does Rashi say about bishul? Because bishul, he doesn't really, he doesn't give an example of napa bishul. But all he says, which helps us, and this is Tosis, I'm quoting from Tosis. Tosis says, I can tell you what Rashi would hold from bishul. Just by the way he presents bishul in another case. He says, by the way, if that fish was cooking together with meat, somehow, in the pot, you wouldn't be able to eat that fish with melichix. Right? Because then you have like you said before, the basar be'ein. Okay? No, just no.
Anything that was cooking.
In other words, you wouldn't have the nat bar nat. So let's, in other words, it's not that, you wouldn't want to cook fish with meat anyway, but had something cooked. A potato, yes. You would not have the nat bar nat anymore because it was cooking with the rimus. So Tosfos says, wait a minute. What do I understand from that Rashi's example? That he would hold, however, if there is no meat in the pot, then the cooking is no big deal. You see? You see how Tosfos says?
Right.
So Tosfos says, very good. Tosfos infers from the Rashi's example by, had you cooked that potato with real meat, I wouldn't say not bar not, even though there's liquid, because you have the be'ain there, going directly. It's one tam and not two tam. So Tosfos said, good. From Rashi's example, I infer that if there would be no meat present in that pot, only the pot is fleshig, so what if he's cooking it using water? It should be, and that's the way a lot of poskim learn, a lot of Rishonim. Like Tosfos says, Rashi that would also agree that nat bar nat as a concept in hetera would work either way, through bishul or through tzli or she'olu be'ka'ora, however.
However one wants to.
Yeah, exactly. Now, just before we go on to the other...
Now, why would one want to think would be more of a problem than considering the fact that by bishul I have, as you just mentioned, an additional intermediate between the pot and the fish, or mainly the water.
As we say in Arabic, shwaya shwaya. Little by little, we'll get to that. We'll get to the shittas who have a problem with bishul. So then we'll explain. Right. Yeah. But right before we go to them, let's just take one more step in the Gemara, just to see how, where does the Gemara lead. So, yes, we're introduced to this concept, fine, it's acceptable. But then the Gemara adds, just remember, in other words, keep in mind, that an additional scenario, that if you're dealing with a radish that was cut with a fleshik knife, that too, Rashi explains, would be also usher to eat with milk. Now Rashi, Gemara brings the case, but Rashi brings two reasons for it. So I'm quoting Rashi because he brings two reasons. So the Gemara, in giving us that example, that it would be a problem, you would not be able to, by the way, this applies to onion and other sharp vegetables too, you would not be able to take this onion that was cut with a fleishik knife and use it with melichix, cook it with melichix. You have to know, by the way, sometimes onion remains, half an onion is put away in the fridge. What was it cut with? With which knife was it cut with?
Which is also an interesting thing to go to.
And I asked my wife, by the way, I'd like to use some onions for the egg. Yeah, that's fine. Well, you can't make a cheese omelet with it because I used it for meat, right? The question is, well, wait a minute. Can I use it? Let's say I don't want to make a cheese omelet, but I'm using it in the Melicha frying pan. See, also a problem. So even though it's not just because it's going to be a Melicha dish, it's a Melicha frying pan. Here the Gemara is telling us that there will be no nat bar nat in the case of cutting the onion with a fleishik knife. So that's the chiddush. That's why the Gemara leads us to that, because even though we just saw nat bar nat, however, in the following example, you don't have a nat bar nat. You cut an onion with a fleishik knife, then onion is fleishiks, like the real thing.
Would that also be a problem with the knife that was used to, let's say, praise the animal? Like people like to go to a...
No. Only onions.
I'm talking about onions. The knife was used to cut a piece that's not kosher, and then the same knife was used to onion.
Oh, I see.
And now someone consumes that onion. Would that be a problem?
Sure.
So that would be so that people to know that, because people like to go non-Jewish ones if they're on the road and they're traveling. For instance.
Sure.
I'm just going to have a salad.
Of course. There's all kinds of issues in salads. The pots and pans, the bugs. There's a lot of things that people don't realize that. Yeah. Just having a salad. Yeah, that's very good. That's true. Yeah.
You know who did that one? Say?
Don't mention names.
Okay. That name I think one can mention.
Yeah. But anyway, people, I'm only having fish, kosher fish, that is. Yeah. Where was the fish prepared? So if somebody tells you, listen, I was in the Amazon. I got a kosher fish, and I asked the guy to prepare it in aluminum foil over the fire. I guess, you saw the whole thing. You can do that. Yeah, but just to go into a restaurant, besides the problem of Marisain, the people are seeing you, what are you doing there? They don't know that. It's a problem of Marisain too. Even if you have just the vegetables, there's a lot of issues. What about the sauce? What about the knives, like you said, even though it may be cold, and there's no onions. There's no onions. Yeah, it may be cold and it may not be a problem. You may be able to get away with it, bedina shemaya, that you didn't treif. But what about bugs? Depending if the leaves. There are issues even with vegetables. That's true.
Now, with respect to the Marisain.
Yeah.
So I heard there are several people together that takes away. If 2 or 3 people together going to have.
If they're all wearing yarmulkes. Yeah. There's 2 problems with Marisain. People don't understand. One of the problems with Marisain is they're going to look at you and think of you in the wrong way, and that's not good. The second problem with Marisain is that they will learn from you that this place is kosher. So when they see a group of people, I can see what you're saying. Well, it's a group of people, they're probably having a meeting, they're not going to think bad about them. But what about the idea of somebody learning from them? No, I always say that the more people, the worse. I heard Moshe Feinstein saying, if you're going to a movie, take off your yarmulke.
I have a better idea.
Yeah.
Don't go to the movie.
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah. So anyway, Marisain, it can be a problem. So, in the case of snow with the sakin, the Gemara goes on to explain that here you would not have a nat bar nat. So Rashi explains why not. 2 reasons. He brings down, first of all, that the sakin may have shamnunis. The sakin is not completely clean. It may still have a little bit of a be'in on it. And because of that, it's, anything that is be'in, you don't have the nat bar nat situation. Or, the reason that is the more acceptable reason, and that can apply even to a clean knife, is that when it comes to something spicy or hot or sharp, in combination with duchka de sakina, then polit tfei, as the Mefarshim say, they're showing the poskim, it actually emits more of that tam from the sakin itself. So you're going to get more than just tam, you're going to get a lot more coming out from that knife into that onion as a result of the combination of it being an onion and being a knife. Duchka de sakina. So what does that tell us? As the Gemara later on says, but if we'd be dealing with kishut, with a tough, if it's dealing with cucumbers, or if it's dealing with gourd,
gourd,
calabasas, where some of them are sweet and they're totally not harif, all you would need to do is cut away the area where you cut it, where the knife hit. Cut away that area, like we explained that's what you would do with... Kedei klipa. Cut away a little bit, just a little bit.
Would scratching or washing sufficient?
Yes, it would be sufficient too. Either, as we said with fish, the goy is using his knife to cut your salmon. And you know it's salmon because you saw the scales, otherwise you can't have the salmon. There is a fish, by the way, that's called, and he mentioned it, Moshe, dogfish. And dogfish is in the family of sharks, in a sense. But they call it like a rock salmon. I think they call it. It's another name for it because of the colors. Maybe it may look like it. I've never seen it, cut. I've seen pictures of it. But we've already seen many times in Hilchos Taaruvot and Basar בחלב that the goy mesiach lefi tumei for our purposes here is not usually not accepted. The mesiach lefi tumei can help sometimes, like with kefela. He's saying, oh, by the way, I don't feel anything, If we have to ask him and he knows we're trusting him, then we cannot. So we have to see the scales in the fish. If you wanted, they're having a sale. I appreciate that's very nice. They're having a big sale. Salmon, Atlantic salmon for $2.99 a pound is a very good price if you can get it. But if you don't see the scales, you can't have it. Then he's going to use the knife that he used for the squid to slice it for you, to clean it up for you. It's okay. Just wash it very, very thoroughly where the knife cut. Or even better, cut a sliver of it where the knife cut. If you can take your own knife, that's better, but they may stop you at the entrance, with a knife. Anyway, that's what they used to do in the Alte Heim, as they say. In Europe, they used to bring their knife in a basket. Please use my knives. And that's, of course, the better way. But it's cold. Even though it's duchka de sakina, it's still cold. But when we're dealing with snon, radish, onions, and there's a list of other things that may be, depending on, according to some poskim, it's not all of them, even though they're hot. But we're more concerned about it in conjunction with the duchka de sakina, that at least for not barnat purposes, it would not help. The whole onion or radish will be transformed to being a fleischiken, and then, you're limited to where you can use it. That's all. So that's as far as not barnat with radishes and onions, that it wouldn't apply. Okay, now let's just take a quick look at something that we already discussed, just to get a better overview of not barnat. Just like it did not work very well with an onion and a radish, neither will it work with be'isura. Not barnat is only possible behetera, it's not possible with be'isura. So if you have a pot that's not fleishik or milky, but it's a nevela pot, or a goyish pot, it's a ben yoimel, right? You can't say not barnat on the tam that comes out of the walls of the keli. Now, why not?
It's already interesting.
Oh, because why would I think not? I would think not. I would think, in other words, I would think not, but not the Isur should be okay. As there are some shitas who would say that, even though the majority say no. Because ultimately, what happens to the not, bar not? We're saying that the logic behind it is that at some point the tam is just gone.
Well, the taste is too light.
Too light.
To introduce, and that's not already there.
Right.
But to claim that the taste is too light to affect an isser that's already in place.
Right. In other words,
a whole different story.
In other words, what we're saying with Basar, for example, that at the moment it has become a not bar not, it's so diluted, it's so weak that it in itself is no longer capable of making something else usser.
It's not only something else.
Or itself.
A new isser.
A new isser.
Because
right.
So far there's nothing usser
yeah,
yet.
But in the case of Basar B'cholav, it's not strong enough to introduce an isser, to become an isser. Here in Not Bar Not the Isur, what we're saying is this stuff is already isser. This stuff is already usser. So even though it's now diluted a little bit, it still remains partially usser, at least partially usser. When I have to be careful when I say partially, because this would not say that it's partially. It's really usser. The reason why I say partially is because there's always that svara that after all, if you had water, it did become diluted. So can't you say that it's diluted in proportion to the water? Comes along the famous Chanan and says, "Oh, not if you hold Chanan b'shar Yisurim." Right? The water became an Isur. But if you don't hold Chanan b'shar Yisurim, there is a certain dimension here of that it's diluted. If you have to reckon with it, you can.
But that's not. But this diluted is not a nut bar nut. This diluted is a misbakal.
Right. But it's still an Isser that I have to deal with.
Nat bar nat is not a din of bittul.
It's a din of no Isser.
A nat bar nat is not a din of bittul. Nat bar nat, according to the ones who hold it, prevents that chayfetz from having the koyach to create a new Isser.
Right.
And we say the reason is because it's too weak. But we're not saying that the taste is now too weak in order to affect something, that you can't taste it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
It's nat bar nat is not a din of bittul.
Right. Exactly. It's a different status. Now, before we go on, let me just finish this seed. So the Mechaber tells us that as long as the pot was clean, you can eat it with Melicha, mission to have a nice and tam, the hetera. Now, im lo hoyser the chutza yavi, he adds obviously that if he was not cleaned well, im yesh b'mamesh shal p'ti akdera yoyser me'echad b'shishim b'togim, also lochem chutov. If you ever have such a situation, which I can't imagine, that you have more than 1/60th of grease, wow, was it so dirty that you still have so much mamashas on it, more than 1/60th of the fish, also lochem chutov, then you would not be able to eat it with the melichiks. So, you want to make sure that the pot is clean. All right. Now that we more or less understand how this nat bar nat works, the Ramban has a very interesting question. Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, not Maimonides, Ramban. And this question, I think, is raised by others as well. The Ramban, based on one of the Gemaras that discusses the sugya, that a pot in which you've cooked flesh, Basar, you cannot cook milk in, because if you do, the chalav will become aser. He says, but wait a minute, why should that ever be a problem? Why can't I cook melichiks in a fleishike pot? Not fish. Here we're talking about the real thing. I want to cook melichiks in a fleishike pot. Why don't I say nat bar nat? How? Well, the meat produced a tam into the walls of that pot. And that tam that's going to come into the milk right now will be a nat bar nat. That's the Ramban's initial question, because then he asks something else. So the Tosfos says about that obviously that's not, Tosfos in explaining that concept says that this obviously does not constitute a nat bar nat. This basar cannot be a nat bar nat. Why? Very simple. The Tosfos says that as soon as the tam of basar comes out, it's already in the milk. As it's coming out, it asers. It never had a chance of becoming weak. You follow me? A nat bar nat means that it has at some point become weak. Here, as it's coming out, it's already joining. It's already being combined with the milk. It's becoming aser right away without yet becoming a nat bar nat. It has not yet weakened. By fish, of course, we say that it first weakened, and then it came in, as it was coming in. It's fish, it's a part of the food. Now that time in the fish, to go have it with milk, it's niklash, it's weak enough. Here, you don't have that advantage, you don't have that benefit. As soon as it's coming out, before it becomes a tam sheni even, it's already asering the cholav. That's how Tosfos explains over there. But anyway, look at what's interesting is the next Ramban. The Ramban asks on himself, okay, the way the Ramban understands the Gemara of Dogim Beke'oro, he says like this. The fleishike tam in fish, don't think that it's nothing. It's still chashuv. Why is it okay? It can't go on. It does not have the strength to aser the chalav. That's how he learns. He learns it a little from a different angle. He's not saying it has become weakened and it has lost its chashivas. He actually says it's still chashuv. Don't make the mistake of thinking the tam of the meat in the fish is not chashuv. No, it is. It's still there. It just behetera. It does not have the koach to aser the milk. So he said, okay, if that's the case, he's asking on himself, I have a big question. Okay, the meat does not have the koach to aser the milk, but why not say that the milk coming into the meat should make the meat aser? The milk can go, the milk still has koach, So you see, the tam of basar in the dogin cannot go further and aser the milk. Yeah, but if you put it with milk, the milk can aser the tam of basar. That's the question he asks himself. And he comes up with a revolutionary idea in basar b'chalav. That's what the poets can say, that this Ramban is the revolutionary idea of basar b'chalav. It's his pshat. Basar b'chalav does not answer each other, cannot become an issue of basar b'chalav, unless the two of them give tam to each other.
Right.
Did you hear this? Chiddush? It's a chiddush.
There has to be exchange.
There has to be an exchange.
You can't have that one of the two remains mutter and the other becomes asur b'basar b'chalav.
Right. So here, you're saying the chalav will aser the flesh, the tam of basar, but the basar cannot go further? No. If the basar can't go, then forget it. You don't really have an isser of basar b'chalav here. Here Rabbi Kiva talks about it here too, elaborates more about this. So what's the difference between Tosfos and the Ramban? You could suggest that Tosfos holds that the nat bar nat is such a weak tam that it cannot aser. It cannot become aser.
It cannot become an isser.
It cannot become an isser. And the Ramban says no. Nat bar nat is still something to reckon with. It's still there, but it cannot aser something else.
And therefore...
it can become aser, technically. It can. Whereas the Tosfos says, no, it can't. It's lost its koach. The Ramban says, no, it can, technically. It just can't do it to something else.
And for itself also.
Well, if it's basar b'chalav. If it's basar b'chalav. Therefore, because it cannot do both. So that's a different way of understanding nat bar nat. In other words, why is the nat bar nat
I have a
no good?
Question on the Ramban.
Not strong enough. On the Ramban, you mean?
On the Ramban.
Yeah.
He's saying that indeed that now goes the taste of the milk that now goes in the potato that has a meat taste.
Right.
Can usher the meat in the potato.
One more time.
He says the taste of the milk that now enters into the potato that has a meat taste.
Right.
Can usher the meat taste the potato.
Yeah.
Except for because it's not mutual.
Right.
Ultimately, it won't become.
That's correct.
But now that the meat taste in the potato is a combination of milk and, if it now in turn goes into this is now a meat and milk taste combination that in and of itself would be an isser.
Yes.
If now this isser goes into the milk.
Goes back
into the milk. So according to the ones that say that basar b'chalav.
No, but neither of them would hold that it could do that. It would not be able to travel that far in aser. Remember what we said, even according to Tosfos, or even according to Ramban, regardless, that isser sitting in the potato does not have the koach to go there.
No, the milk cannot.
Yeah.
But we have a new isser now?
Because you're calling it an isura. Now it's a nat bar nat. It has become a nat bar nat isura in the potato.
Right.
I saw somebody talk about that, yeah. So why don't you say now that in the potato you have a nat bar nat isura?
So according to those that hold that basar b'chalav, in other words Hanan, introduce an isser of basar b'chalav and whatever it affects.
Yes.
According to that, it would be a basar b'chalav isser.
Yeah, but then the problem with that is that you would have to say that there's Hanan and Blias, which not everybody agrees. Because that's the koach of that new isser.
Yeah, but Hanan is in pots, no other food.
Yeah, even in food.
Okay, so
you're right. You're right. It would be a good question. Yeah, it would be.
But then it would be mutual.
Yes. Anyway, you can extend this further and further, but it's just interesting how the two look at it differently, the Tosfos and the Ramban. By the way, just going back on the Ramban's question, by cooking, original question of cooking in a pot, milk in a fleishike pot, why don't you say nat bar nat? The Ran also explains that when you have boiling water, this is the Ran, when you're having water being boiled, it's extracting much more than just tam. It's actually extracting mamoshes shel isur, he says. And then the tam is a lot stronger and not so kalush. So he adds, and that's what we're going to see soon. This shot in the Ran helps understand, explains to us why not everybody would agree with bishul with nat bar nat. Again, the Ran explains in reference to that question that is raised by the Ramban, why I cannot cook milk in a fleishik pot. It says cooking extracts the tam so much that this is not a tam kolish anymore.
But there's a big difference.
Yeah, it's a different twist. It just says it's not kolish, but because of the cooking. I wouldn't say it's mamoshes like the language says, because what mamoshes is there? Still tam, but I guess it's like mamoshes because the tam is much stronger than if it would not be bishul.
In the case of the nut barnat, where the potato was raw cooking in the pot, it was the taste that was emitted from the potato in milk that was our problem.
All right.
But here we now want to cook the milk itself, and there is no potato in between.
No, right, and we hold, of course, it's usher. There's no nat barnat. In explaining the question,
but where's the nat barnat?
There isn't. That's what he explained, but he doesn't explain Tosis pshat. The Pasha pshat that he doesn't ever get around to becoming a nat barnat. Right, has a different twist that cooking. And but it's an important twist because we're going to see the other shittas who don't agree that nat barnat exists in bishul. So here he says the reason why it doesn't work, why it's usher, is because cooking extracts much more of the tam. That tam you cannot say is kolish anymore.
So that would be a potato cooking in water in a fleishik pot and later heated with milk. So now since it was cooking, so the extraction...
We'll get to that. Here I'm talking about the example of cooking milk, real milk, in a fleishik pot.
You wouldn't know how you would want this thing up. That you would need now to drag along.
So Tosis said that you don't even have a chance. It doesn't ever become a nat barnat.
Right.
The Ran says it's more than, it's different. It's not that it doesn't get a chance. It's just that a lot more time comes out. All right, fine. But anyway, I think this Ran is important because it helps us understand the other shittas. There are three shittas lemaisa. If one wants to understand nat barnat for the rest of the Siman, we're going to see a longer more. We're going to see it next time. See base, see gimel. One has to keep in mind that there are basically three legabe nat barnat. Do we say it by irui? In other words, do we say it by dogim she'olu me'akara only? In other words, if the fish were hot, sitting in a hot or not hot pot of meat, bowl of meat, or do you say it also by bishul, or can you also say it by tzli, roasting it together in the pot, it's fish in a flesh pot being baked or roasted. Does it apply to all three cases or not? So we have three shittas. Tosis, who appears to go along with the Pashup Pshat and Rashi that we explained, nevertheless brings down the Rivon. And the Rivon is one of those shittas that holds only olu. The fish was hot, sitting in the fleshika pot. That's fine. It's Gemara. Don't tell me that this includes bishul, the Rivon says. Rivon holds that anything that is cooked, hot, boiling water, there's no nat barnat. It's one time. Why? So the Beis Yosef explains this shita. Beis Yosef explains that in the Gemara's example of olu, where the fish was hot only, when it was not cooked, there's a little bit of tam. There's not really that much tam. And that's why the Gemara said, you know what, by the time it came out into the fish, it's a nat barnat. By bishul, the Rivon would hold that the tam that is coming out of all the wall through all the pressure of the water is much stronger. Not only is it stronger, the whole tam of the basar could be coming out as a result of the boiling in the pot. On that, you don't say nat barnat. He says, how could you? Fish cooking in a fleshika pot, all that hot water is going to extract all the tam. That fish is going to be loaded with tam. So the Rivon says, from the Gemara, it's not mashma that they were matir bishul, only mashma that dogim she'olu beke'ara. That's the Rivon shita. Sefer Truma, and there's others, I think the Smak, they allow bishul too. Why? They hold bishul is great. Bishul is even better than olu beke'ara. Now, here, this is the example I mentioned earlier on. Here, this would be one example where bishul is not as strong as. Why? Because in bishul they say you have 3 timim, not 2. You have 3. You have the meat going into the pot, from the pot going into the water, from the water going into the fish. For sure. What's the question? The whole Gemara was about dogim she'olu beke'ara, but bishul, gewaldig, amechaya. For sure you would have nat barnat. You have 3 nat barnat, and therefore they say it's perfectly okay, no problem. They have a problem, however, with sli. With real sli, you only have 2 tamim. And those 2 tamim would not be sufficient. In other words, it would not be sufficient to call it a true nat bar nat.
But with Olo, you only...
What? Right. Yeah, but that's more of it's a weaker tam in Olu than it is with Sli. Right? With Sli, you're actually roasting it in the keli, yeah, making it. So that's much more of...
The heat's more intense.
More intense, more tam, and even though it's also a nat bar nat, but because of the intensity, I guess, because of the...
It releases far more taste.
Because of the way it happens, it's direct, with no medium in between them, then that's not what the Gemara meant, of course, and that would not be allowed. Olu would therefore only mean, poshut, that the fish was hot, not that they were actually roasted together. So these shitas would not hold of roasting, but they would hold of bishul. Actually, it's interesting, the Tur brings this shita down, I think he holds like that, the Rosh holds like that. The Roshal, and even the Shach here seems to be passing, going along with that. That bishul is fine, but sli, no. Now, what do we see from the Mechaber? From the Mechaber, you will see what the Rambam says, and this concerning this kind of situation, what the Rashba says, the Ran says, the Ravya, and also Rashi, according to the Ri, that there's no chiluk between any of the 3 methods. Doesn't appear to be a chiluk, that they will all constitute as nat bar nat. Alright, so we had 3 shitas. The Rivan, only Olu, not Bishul, not Sli. Then we have the Sefer Truma, the Smag, the Rosh, the Roshal, only Bishul or Iroi or Olu, but not Sli. And then you have, of course, the majority, I think it's the majority of Rishonim that hold, including Rabbi Elyahu Kin, the Rambam, that in every situation it would be mutter. And that's what the Mechaber basically says. The Dogush is Basar Shadnitzlu Bikdeira. And Koshakin, of course, if it's Olu Bekeora, as the Gemara brings down, if you learn Pshat, that what it means is that it's just that the fish were hot, not that they were actually roasted together. Either one would be mutter. Now, that's so far, that's the general halacha in Sif Aleph. We haven't seen the various comments of the Ramah, which only appear in Sif Beis, as to what halacha l'maisa, how do we hold today. This is basically the Mechaber. There are shittas that say that b'di'evet it may be okay, but not lechatchila. In other words, lechatchila you can't cook it knowing that you're going to eat it with milk. But b'di'evet it may be okay. So we'll get to that another time. But before we finish, I thought it would be interesting to raise 1 or 2 more scenarios that affect nat bar nat, that may or may not. Nat bar nat, what we've seen so far, is when you have a keli, in order to produce a nat bar nat, you're having to do with a pot, a pan, and food, parve food. Right? So the parve food absorbs a tam, which is kolish, it's weak, and therefore, go ahead and eat it with melachix. Do you say nat bar nat if you have 2 foods?
No, the potato was cooked, and that potato was cooked with another potato.
Very good.
Can you have that?
Potato, broccoli was cooked with meat, finished, took it out, and now you want to cook it with?
No, you cook it with another potato, let's say. Now you want to have that other potato with...
Okay, you understood that? Exactly. Are we going to say nat bar nat from that potato that absorbed the meat into the other potato? Second question. Can I cook that potato that absorbed meat in a Melicha pot? Will I say nat bar nat from the food to a keli in the same way I said from a keli to the food? So you understood the 2 questions? Do I say nat bar nat applies between 2 foods items, whereas one has blias because it was once upon a time cooked with flesh, and now I want to cook it with another parve potato that I intend eventually to eat with melachix? Will I say that second parve potato will have a nat bar nat in it, and therefore I can go ahead and eat it with melachix, or I say no? And the answer, I think, we'll go into it next time perhaps. From what I recall, a lot of poskim say no. There's no nat bar nat, even though some say yes. The Pri Megadim is machmer, from what I remember, that you don't have not by ochel, by food. You say that when you have it in a keli, in a pot, from the pot going out into the water, or going directly to the fish, regardless, then you can say banat. But food itself, you don't say it. In other words, what's coming out from the food will be the whole thing. It will come out directly, it will not in a weakened state.
Right. But once there is involved somewhere along the chain, then even subsequent a food that acquires the thing, it can count as an additional nut with respect. In other words, if I have a meat that was cooked in a pot,
right.
Now I cook a potato in that pot.
All right.
And now I cook this potato. Now this potato was not cooked with it; it's cooked in a fleishik pot.
Right.
Now I cook this potato with another potato.
Right.
Then, according to those people who require 3 nut bar nuts, this would qualify as 3 nut.
Oh yes, very good.
So once there was a key involved somewhere in this chain,
yes.
Subsequently even food can act as an additional chain.
Yes, at some point.
It's only if there's no kli
at
left,
some point, a kli can make the difference.
As long as there's no kli somewhere along the way, then a food that directly acquires the taste from another food.
It in itself became like the original source. Yeah. Apparently, I mean, the physics, the chemistry of it is that the food does not lose any or does not somehow weaken the tam. It's like the original thing.
Now, the question is now, is it that food in combination with other food, or would that also apply to the food in combination with a pot?
That was the second question. So if you had a potato that was cooked with meat, and you took it out, and now you're cooking it in a pot, in a Melicha pot, with water.
Where there's no mamishes, only
nothing else. Right, of course, the only taste. Do we say nat banat? And the answer is, it looks like everybody appears to be machmir, that you would not have a nat banat from food to a keli in the same way you don't have it from food to food. Because like we said, the tam in the potato, that is parv, is still like it's in the original form. And therefore it will answer, unless you have shishim, of course, it will answer that pot, that melicha pot, with the tam of the basar that's in the potato, if you know how much tam it is. I mean, you don't have a chanan really, but...
the matter is, whenever you cook two foods,
right,
they don't only absorb taste from each other. They also absorbed a little bit of the molecules. There's a potato that was cooked with the meat. Lemaise has a little bit meat. It's not just a potato that has a taste.
Well, that's why apparently this whole din is different by ochel kli.
Whereas a pot, which meat
it's not just that's why.
Cleaned very. I mean, you can't clean a potato.
Yeah.
You can't take a potato,
that's
cook
exactly,
it with meat,
that's
and
exactly,
clean it well.
That's a good way of explaining it, because with the pot, it's basically clean. All you have is a tam, balua, that somehow becomes further diluted. But with the potato being a fleshika potato now, it's like the flesh or some of it is still there, not just as a tam, maybe.
Some pots, the metal in the pot.
Yes.
Just the food molecule with food, most of the food in the pot.
Well, it's going to release, the tam is going to be released from the pot, especially a metal pot, as opposed to pottery, maybe not all of it will come out.
Right.
But
some of the pot, they use lead pot things, and some of it will come out.
It will come out, but that's the chiddush of nat by nat, that even though it does come out, even if a lot of it comes out, by the time it reaches the fish, which is parv, it's not...
I understand it's in response to the molecule to molecule work, because there are some pots where you're going to have that lower, and we still hold that one.
Right. But with food, apparently, it perhaps the essence of the flesh of the meat is more there. It's more detectable. It's there. It is not as diluted. It still retains its original strength, and we will not allow for nat banat in that case. In other words, it will not be such an easy heter. Whereas with it coming from a pot, just the fact that it was in a pot already, apparently the pot does something to it.
You should say the reverse would also be true. We've always been a fleshing pot.
Right, but it would be worked the other way around, the reverse, the same thing. Yeah, you cook the fish in a Melicha pot. Yeah, in either way, you would still have an upper. Okay.
So that example is not as elegant, because not fish with meat, and that in itself really goes.
Or in the case of fish, yeah. But in the case of rice or potatoes.
Potato rice would be okay.
Yeah. And now this is, by the way, this question does arise sometimes, you have rice that was cooked in a fleshika pot, because, rice, is parv. You may use a fleshika pot if you don't have a parv. And you want to have, that rice with something dairy. You can have it in the same meal. You just can't, the Ashkenazim are machmir not to put the dairy into that rice now. Even though it's not barnat, it's a chumrah, as we will see. But there's no problem in the same meal or especially if you want to have a glass of milk afterwards, no problem. It's definitely not a problem. But we will get to that, Mr. Shem, in another sieve. Yeah.